Okay, so welcome to the 34th W.E.A piano class. Usually my classes are about 10, they've been mostly 10 students. I can accommodate up to 12, even up to 15, because it's not so much the class size to start with, it's students coming and actually playing one by one that's the problem. But I found that in the last maybe 5 W.E.A groups, most of the students have been happy just to sit there and just take it in as a lecture. It's very daunting for me to ask you to come and play pieces that we're studying, because you're put on the spot and there's all these eyes watching you, and it feels like a concert, and it feels like you're being tested in an exam, and it's quite nerve-wracking, and I do lose students when that happens. So they tend to stay there and practice playing the piano virtually up in the space or on their laps to get the idea. We start basically straight on the introduction. What the piano is and its layout, and what I've done to help understand the layout of this complex, what seems to be a complex layout of the piano. Not everybody has a piano to practice. Some students have electronic keyboard. Not as many keys as a piano, 88 keys, much less, but still enough to be able to play most of the first, well, most of the method, with just a little bit of restriction in the very early stages when I just show the whole range of the keys. The coloured strip, if you'll be getting, and I'll explain that, sits at the back of the piano. So the normal piano will get all the coloured strip on the left-hand side and a little bit left over the top, which we don't worry about that bit. When it goes onto a keyboard, electronic keyboard, then there's a bit of modifying, and the modification is done on the blue strip. When you have a look at the piano on page 7, the diagram, you'll see where it says the very, very low, the purple bit, that is the extent of your piano, but the electronic keyboard only comes up to the very low, and this is the blue bit. So the blue will only cover three of these white keys that comes in about like this. And as I go through the colour strip, you get an idea, if you've got a keyboard, just where it's positioned. The colour strip goes to the back. So we look at the piano and we see it's essentially made up of 2 keys, 2 rows of keys. The white all flat, all looking the same, the black raised, and on closer inspection you've got these groups of 3 and 2, 3 and 2 all the way up. The diagram so it shows you 3 black keys and 2 black keys. The coloured strip is organised in these little blocks, and they circle around 3 blacks and 2 blacks. And encircling those 5 black keys, you've got 7 white keys. And this keeps repeating all the way through. The coloured strip is dividing the piano up into areas of pitch, how high or low the sound is. So we've got this very low pitch down here, very low sound. And then just gradually the sound just gets higher and higher into the middle pitch, and getting higher and higher. So the very high ones on the right hand side, the very low ones on the left hand side. We also refer to these little blocks as octaves. And we're not interested in the real definition of what an octave is. If you know what an octave is, 8 notes apart, we're not interested in that. We're interested in using this name, relatively speaking, as in blocks of pitch. So we have a low octave block, the middle octave block, high octave, etc. And when we start playing notes and reading music, then we start to understand what is a definition of an octave later on. So I'm not concerned with that at this stage. Page 7, and we start looking at the organisation of the keys on the piano. They're divided up into two halves. And the note that divides this up is positioned where the middle is, with the two black keys, slightly to the left. And when you put your coloured strip up there, you'll see that there's middle C key shown there, with two signs on either side, showing that the piano is divided up into what's called the treble side, on the right hand side, and the bass side, on the left hand side, of this middle note, which is referred to as a middle C. Its significant aspect we don't need to know at this stage. We just know that there's a middle note, happens to be a middle C, and it divides the piano up into treble side and bass side. And when we start playing these first few songs, we're relating to this higher or lower side. Before we begin reading the notes, we begin by looking at movable joints. To play the piano, we've got a number of joints that are movable. Finger joints, right? The fingers just moving up and down, usually on the joint where the knuckles are, right? Unless you're very dexterous and you can move these other joints, right? They usually just go up and down like this, almost like a piston. There's the wrist joint, it goes up like this, up and down. And the arm, right, which is quite flexible, it goes sideways and also up and down. We've got this movement, we can go like this, we can go sideways like this, go over, right, and we can move the fingers up and down like this. Quite a versatile array of movements on the hand. I've narrowed this down to one essential movement, the wrist movement. Right. We're going to start with this wrist movement, and we need to start lubricating this wrist, as adults, some more than others. You don't need the piano for this. This is a mechanical movement. All we need is basically a flat surface, and to get this feeling of coming down onto a flat surface, table, with all the fingers, fingertips, maybe even the little finger, without the thumb, to get this feeling of the wrist moving and coming up and down like this. I refer to this movement as a relaxed wrist curve. You are going to push down on the surface, bend your wrist, and just relax the hand, and it just lifts up in a relaxed state. Then it comes down, and then it lifts up. And this is essentially the movement that we're going to transfer this movement onto the keys. Right? We're going to just write keys. It's just a little block. We're not aiming for accuracy. And the two black keys is what we're going to eventually get. It's this movement here. You put some pressure on the surface as you lift it up. So you push down, because the piano is a hitting action. You have to hit, put a bit of pressure, and then lift it up. Not just up like this, pushing down and then lifting up and relaxing. To lift it up, you have to relax, or else it just comes up stiffly like that. The fingers of the hands are numbered from the thumb. So the thumb is the number 1, and the fingers come out with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this way. So we're going to concentrate on using 2 fingers, the second and the third, on 2 black keys. So we're going to isolate only the 2 black keys to start learning how to play the keys. You see on page 9, you've got the right hand positioned in the high octave block, where the two black keys are. And the left hand is on the low octave block, green with the two black keys, 2s and 3s. And you're going to practice with two fingers, the 2 and the 3. Left hand coming down and then lifting up and relaxing. That's motion. You can see the diagram, exercise 1. The arrow is suggesting that you're lifting up after you've hit each of those keys. Then the right hand does the same. The left hand is playing on the green, on the left hand side of the middle, so it's got the bass clef there. The right hand is playing on the treble side, so it's got the treble clef there. So that treble on the bass is just a relative side of the piano. The class that I've got here is a beginner's class. I'm not assuming anybody knows anything about music. If you have, good for you. Right? You've learned something. But this is not a class that needs prerequisite knowledge about music. If you've done an instrument before, you've done the piano before and you've had a taste of it, good, you've got some idea about what these clefs are going to do. Of course there's going to be a little bit more added on. If you haven't, then you're just understanding this purely as these two signs tell me which side of the piano it is on. And that's what we need to know. Right? When you play a musical sound and then the sound stops, we call that detaching. We're detaching the fingers from the keys and the sound stops. When that happens, we're having a rest from sound. We call this a rest. And the rest sign is that squiggly line. Music begins with the clef position the hand on the piano, telling you which side of the piano you're playing in respect to that middle C. Also, music has these lines that are divided up into little blocks, little spaces. We call these bars. American, we call them measures. Bar lines divided up into these little blocks, these bars. And an extra big thick line at the end of the music, called the double bar line, that tells you the music's finished. Significance of this won't be apparent for some time, so you'll just see the music. We'll have these blocks, these bars will be grouped, and as you become more familiar with reading, you start to understand what is the significance of having bars